we're going to start by wet coating. Now, I've got some leaves that might end up getting touched up afterwards, because I might like to have them on top of the bird. So wet coating is just putting on a coat, and we're going to work while it's wet. We're not adding water, it's just wet paint that we're dealing with. So I'm just going to come up to here right now. We'll do the head separately. So I get my coat on there. I'm going to pick up a little bit of raw sienna, and I'm going to come from under the wing. So we're looking at our colored picture, and you can see where the dark is. I'll wipe my brush off. I can pick up a bit more raw sienna. You do want to see the color, and you see how I'll scratch it coming up. Now, a lot of times, depending on the temperature, and it's pretty toasty in here, it dries really fast on you. So what I do is I would pick up a bit of my moon yellow and blend it down into it. Okay, so it's nicely blended like that. Now when you look at your picture, you can see where it's lighter. I'm wiping my brush off. Sometimes you won't have to add that moon yellow. It might still be wet, but today it's appearing to be toasty, so we'll go with, most of us are going to have to add that. So you see how I'm just lightly, I don't want you to press hard because you overblend and then you don't have any contrast. Okay, so I've come in and I've done a nice light highlight on his chest. And then we're going to repeat the same for the back of his head. Now, you might prefer to use your little 1/8, so I'll switch just because, you know, we're going to be adding raw sienna and coming from here, it's just a tiny area. So it helps to be able to have a little bit more control and not over apply too much color. So I'm putting on my wet coat and I blend it right down. And we know we get on our eyes, but our eyes are there because we have to work around them. We need to see where they are. So I'm going to do the same thing with, I wipe my brush off on my towel or paper towel, whatever you've got. And I'm going to come from the back, and I'm not pressing hard. You see, if I don't press too hard, I don't over blend. So I want to come from all the way along the top of his wing. Just kind of work that color inwards. And I'm going to apply some. And now if you look at your bird, you're going to see some behind his eye. So we want to have it a little stronger there. Come up from around the beak. And I'm curving following the direction that these things would go. So we want to follow our direction. I'll wipe my brush. I'll pick up a little of my warm white. And I'll come in and I'll apply my highlight coming backwards. Do you see how I want it to fade in there, fade to the front, but we still see that darker section by the beak. I can put a little bit of light under his eye too. And I can pop this up here on his chest because it seems to fade in as it dries. So we'll just add a little more white while I'm there. So I'm going to clean my brush off because now I have white and moon yellow, which is like a white base kind of thing. So I'm cleaning both my brushes and I just dry them in my towel. These are not like, they're bristle brushes, but they're not like our lunar blenders that we can't get them to dry up. Not too bad with the towel. They work pretty good for that. So now I'm going to take just a little bit of the raw sienna. I might want a little more soft black in there. Yeah, I think I do from what I mixed. There. So I wipe my brush so I have it just to scratch in. I'm going to pick up that color. And I'm just almost like a dry brush. Scratching in this darker. I'll dry scratch a little behind the eye. And just, it's like I'm shading, but this brush is exactly like to a chisel. So it'll allow me to get just little scratches. Do you see? But if you press really hard, it'll be like solid paint. It's squishing his nose. So I'm not pressing hard. It's soft scratches. But do you see how that has strengthened everything up on him and it's darkened him up nicely? And of course, we will clean up his eyes and all that kind of stuff afterwards. But right now, this is where we want to head. But this one is dry scratched on, or, you know, like it's not going to stay wet long enough for you to blend that in. So it's a lot better to come back at the very end and just softly scratch that in. Alrighty? That's our mission.
And those are lower blender.
Okay, so we're going to start with our wing, the bottom wing. So I'm going to take and double load my 1/4 inch flat with Morning Mist and Soft Black. And we're going to start at the bottom of the wing and just slide up and create wing feathers. You like them to come off the edge so that they end up taking away that look of the base coating, right? So you can do them in shorter strokes or long strokes. It's absolutely whichever you like. And then I'm going to pick up more Morning Mist, and I'm just going to do the first half. I'll call it first half of that wing. I want a bit more soft black. I thought I had more than that. But I still want the Morning Mist to be stronger. Now we are against a Morning Mist base coat here, so it is going to make a difference for us, and it's going to give us this nice feathery look. I'm not concerned about getting up into the top cap right now. That's okay. We don't care about that. We just want to have these nice lightened feathers along here. And then we're going to get into blue over there. But right now, I'll let you do that part, and then we'll move on. Okay. So we wanted to do this with a dirty brush. And of course, we did that in a section. So we're going to go back. And I reloaded my brush in those colors to make it a dirty brush. Wiped off most of the color. And now it says pick up winter blue on the corner of the brush. Well, if I pick up winter blue, it's a lighter color, so it would always go on the lighter part of my brush. Okay, so I would continue the feathers along that rest of that section. So if you went over into that section already, you just go over top of them. So see, it doesn't matter if I bring another little feather over. I just want them to not look like they stop like a brick wall and a line. So you're going to go over those like that. And then I'm going to wipe my brush because we can't just do that little tiny section. So my brush is wiped. It's still a dirty brush. And I'm going to pick up Colonial Blue. And I'm going to blend with it. Now my brush is not that dirty anymore. I wiped it and I probably shouldn't. But anyway, so I'm going to pick up Colonial Blue and I'm just going to pat that Colonial Blue to blend in here. Just the top section. And then I'm going to pick up the Winter Blue again. And we'll bring in the little feathers along the end. So you can see those in your picture. Yeah, we just want it to fade up to little tiny lighter blue feathers. So you can just tip the corner of the brush and get a few more up in there. I'll get one off this edge here so he doesn't look like, see, it looks like I can see in my view here, I can see where I've stopped with the other. Yeah, so I just want to get rid of that. There we go. And I'm just using the corner of the brush just to get a little bit up there. That's it. That's his wing. So we're going to wet coat the belly using my 1/4 inch. I'm going to pick up the white, warm white, and come from the top down into that. Might like that a little bit brighter. Now we know we're going to clean up our edges there, so we're not concerned about getting up onto the face. Cleaning my brush out because the color is kind of whitish, right? So I'm going to pick up Royal Navy, and I'm going to come from the bottom and under his wing a bit. You can see where it's, and I want to just lightly scratch that up. So I'll clean my brush off. You have to continue cleaning off the brush, because if I want to streak some of the moon yellow back in there, do you see how it picks up all that blue? So I'm just going to continue to pull a little more of my moon yellow back into that, just to soften it a bit. I will never have two looking the same because, well, it's impossible when you're wet blending with anything. Like, none of these birds will look the very same. So I clean my brush off, and I'm going to take a little of the Midnight Blue. That's the darker. And I'm going to come from the very bottom, and I just want to scratch a little of that darker up. I'm not intending it going past the Royal Navy where it meets into there, okay? And again, now you see how my white has kind of disappeared? So I'm going to just pick up a little of the moon yellow on my brush, and I had cleaned off that navy and the warm white, and I can just scratch a little, and you can pull a few little feathers with the chisel of your brush just off the edge if you want, or you can take your liner and pull in a few of those. But do you see how I'm just scratching very softly a little of that? I just want to pop that up a bit. It looks bright when you do it. As it dries down. So you can always go back and add more. Now, if you feel like your blue is too bright there, it's kind of started to dry on me. Remember how we kind of dry brushed with that other color before? I can kind of soften this up with a little of the moon yellow. I'll flip my brush over. So I can push that back down if I want it down or whatever. But like I say, no two birds are going to be the same. So don't panic about that. Alrighty, that's what I want you to do. I'm going to wet coat the top of his head, and we're going to do this little back section at the same time. This right here, okay?
This is the sapphire blue.
And we're doing it with sapphire blue. I'm going to pick up Royal Navy, and I'm going to come from the back. I'm using my little 1/8. You don't want to use your 1/4 inch. It's going to be too big. And remember how we talk about just a soft touch. Don't press too hard. And it's getting lighter in this, and I can just end it off soft and scratchy into the white, or later if you want, you can pull white back into it. Doesn't matter. And then I'll pick up the same thing coming from the back of this section, and I'll just work my way this way. Now I've actually lost all of the black that goes around there, but we put that on with our liner later on. So you're not concerned about that. I'm going to give my brush a little wipe out, and it almost gives this a little time to set up a smidge too. I'm picking up some Deep Midnight, and this is optional if you don't feel it needs to be darkened. It looks grayish when you put it on, but it does dry darker. So I'm just deepening up that back end of his head. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to go to the tail feathers and the wing feathers like we did before. So I've loaded my brush in sapphire blue, and I picked up
Royal Navy.
Royal Navy, thank you. And I'm going to just chisel from the top downwards. Pick up Winter Blue, and just chisel up some light tail feathers. Okay, so I clean my brush off. I'm going to pick up, load it in Royal Navy, pick up again I loaded it in sapphire and picking up the Royal Navy. Now we're going for the next section of the wing, and you can see that it's by that black part that we have on there, that black patch. So we just come with the dark coming downwards, pick up winter blue again. I think I got into it. Yuck. Okay, and then off the end of the tail. Do you see how you will lift that tail feather up off, the wing feather up off the tail by just chiseling upwards so it's darker there. I'm going to wipe my brush. Now this section, I am going to wet coat. And this is wet coat in my sapphire blue. I'm going to pick up again my Royal Navy, and I'm just going to blend it like we did on the top of the wing of the other feather. Remember him? And then I'm wiping my brush a bit, and I'm going to, on the dirty brush still, and I'm picking up winter blue. So you see that these ones are kind of a little bit more of a loop. Some of us like to do loops.
And they're hard to do.
No. So it's just that you slide it down, and as you lift up, you just give it a curve. And then we'll just kind of feathery up a little bit of highlights throughout the rest of the section. That's him. Okay, so he's nice and easy. Follow him step by step on your notes. So I've wet coat my belly and a little up into the face, and I'm picking up neutral gray on my dirty brush, and I'm just nice and softly gonna scratch that upwards. I'll give my brush a little bit of a wipe. It's my 1/4 lunar blender, and I'll just chisel a little bit in there around the eye. It's just to give a little bit of what we'll call depth in here. We don't want it to end up looking like it's just solid base coated. So I'll take my white, so pick up some more white, and I'll just kind of softly streak that into this. So it ends up giving us a little bit of a feathery look. That's all we're looking for. Just to come through here and just kind of break up where I've got the gray. Just make it a little bit feathery so that the white wisps into it. And he's nice and not hard to do. If you want to, I think he could take a little bit darker, so I'll pick up a little more of the neutral just from the bottom, so I can kind of just scratch a little of that in there. That looks better. Just to darken his butt up a bit. And I can put a little gray that's on my brush in those white parts there. I just don't want it to all look pure white. He's going to get the colors coming from the backwards. So that's what we do there. All right, so I'm going to have you go and do that. Oh, yeah. We're back. So we're going to start by wet coating with not a dirty brush. Rewind. Okay, so I'm going to wet coat the bottom section and the back of his head. Wipe my brush, pick up some raw sienna. And I'm going to start from this bottom, and I want to darken it down here and just nice and soft scratch it up. I'll come to the back of his neck and along that top part of the wing, and just nice and soft kind of work that up in there. Now your moon yellow will begin to dry, so of course you can pick up some more moon yellow and scratch it back into it. It's almost, I want to have a bit more of the raw sienna here. So it's almost like shading, you know, what you're doing. You're putting in that little bit of darker, and that is going to turn his head. So I'm going to use my little 1/8 to do the front of his head. Wet coat it. Wipe the brush off. You have to give the brush a wipe because there'll be way too much of the moon yellow in the brush, especially at that point. Wipe it out so that I'm able to blend back and forth nice and soft and just get him that nice light bit to his head. Now I'm going to pick up, I keep continuing to wipe my brush. I'm going to pick up some warm white and come from the top of his head and scratch my highlight in. I'll come back over here and scratch in a bit of highlight. And now it's coming in too bright there. So all I'll do is pick up a little bit of my moon yellow with that white. And that'll just soften that highlight out for me. Just a little bit of scratchies. See that I'm just scratching that on. I'm not blending it into wet paint. And I've got a little bit, now I'm going to see what I got here. See what I got. A little bit of the raw sienna and moon yellow. I'm just going to scratch a bit there and in that little back wing thing before we do the black parts. So it's just going to have a little bit of that yellow, and you'll see that in your colored picture there. So it doesn't matter how much you get there. If you feel low too much, you can push a little white back. Doesn't matter. Okay, so that's where I want you to get to before we do the black. So we're going to double load. Every time I start, it's like, so we're gonna, and then when we put the video on and put it all together, I keep saying, so. Okay, so I've double loaded.
Are you on? Okay.
And I'm going to, with the gray, this is neutral gray and lamp black. And it chokes out, black chokes your color out very quickly. So I'm using the black, and you see how the black will clean up any areas that you might have that you're not, it's a wiggly or something. You can clean that up just by this. So again, I'll pick up more of my neutral gray. So we're going to do the top part of the wing now.
Are you leading with the black or the gray?
I lead with the black. Whatever colors at the end that follows unloads.
Okay.
So that leaves that on the tip of my thing. So my dark is ahead. My light is following back behind. And do you see how I can bring the chisel of that into those white sections if they're straight? And it'll kind of clean those up a bit. So I'm again picking up some more neutral gray. And I'm just we just want to have a little in here. I don't need it to be bright, bright. I just don't want it to look like it's flat black. So I just feather a little bit with whatever's left on my brush into that. And if you want it to be a little more wispy, you can or jagged, pardon me, into there. We can use our brush to do that, or you can go back with your liner after. We're going to use our liner to clean up these edges and make that all nice. So I'm going to put another little bit of light right here so that this feather stands out on top a bit more. There we go. So there's not much to this. Lamp black, neutral gray, and feather in his. We're going to do a little demo here of our nice little sweet flowers. And these are the flowers on bird number 2. I'm not doing them in order, of course. So I'm going to take and I'm going to press. I've double loaded my 1/4 flat with almondine on the bottom, warm white on the top. And it's only the top because that's where I'm going to press and put it from. So you can come from beside each other or randomly around. Now the next flower is going to be on top. So it's press, press, press and pull towards, press, pull to the center, press, pull to the center. Now we're going to do all the centers on our flowers at the same time, just to save time and not have to get those colors out right now. So it's again press and slide. As you lose your white at the tip of your petal, you know that you're going to have to reload. So it's press, brushes upright on the tip, press, slide, and lift off to the middle. I'll throw another petal in here because I've gapped it a lot. There. So we've got these cute little flowers. They're just press and slide flowers. The other flowers we're going to do are going to be like little wiggle flowers. So these are nice, simple, and easy to do. With these flowers, we're going to take, I've double loaded my brush in the blush pink and the baby blush. So baby blush being lighter, we start with it up to the top. I'm just going to press a little bit and wiggle. And then I'll lay the next petal in on top. Pick up a little bit more of my light. See how that will have it laying on top of the other petal. Now I'll add these ones. Just follow along where your petals are. You'll go off the edge a little bit, but I'd rather be off the edge a little bit than right on top and end up seeing that little line around it. This one's going to have the blue flower on top of it, so we'll just go ahead and do that petal. You might feel more comfortable turning your surface so that you are not feeling like you're trying to be a contortionist to try to do your petals. It's a press and slide down. So I start with the brush on the chisel at the base, press to get it out there a bit, just wiggle along, trying to keep the base of my brush down at the base of the petal. So it's here, always sliding back to the base of the petal. Here's another one. And we are going to come in here after and give a little bit of a shadow just to shade them up a bit, to define them. So we've got those petals laid in, cleaning my brush out. Dry it out well so that you don't have your paint become transparent on you. I've mixed some of my winter blue into some warm white. And I'll do these little petals up here. You can switch to a smaller brush. And remember, we want those petals on top. I think I might be able to have a little more of the white mixed in here. And then you always do the flowers that are in the background. So this one's going to end up having another petal on top of it. And we'll do the little bud over here. That petal's on top. Double loading. And this whole flower is going to end up on top of this one, so. So it's the same thing all the way around. Put your brush down on an angle if I want to get just the edge of that petal. Bring it around. Bring your petal all the way around. And now this guy has a little bit of a flower that's kind of tucked from underneath. And you're only seeing part of it, so we may as well just go in and put him in first. And the flowers you do last, like I'm doing these blue ones last, so they will end up being on top of the other petals. So we're going to let those dry, and then we will come in and do a little bit of shading. Now for the lilacs, what we're going to do is I'm taking a number 4 filbert. You can use a 6 if you don't have a 4. So I'm taking, and I'm double loading with dioxazine purple and lavender. And then once I have loaded my brush, I do it a couple of times so that, and work it in on the palette so it doesn't end up with my flower petals being striped. Once I've done that, then I'm going to touch into my mix. I have made a mix of, to lighten it. So it is the lavender, one part lavender, 2 parts warm white. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to use my brush on the side. So it's on its side. So what I mean by that is rather than my brush being flat, I turn it on its side with the dark down and the light up, and I just pull, and I have to pick up my light quite often because we do lose the light. So again, it's dioxazine, lavender, and then the lavender mix with the warm white. And for the little petals on the end, I actually prefer to do those with the number 2. So it's press, and these are going to overlap each other, which is going to end up showing my depth. I think I'm going to add a bit more warm white to my mix. I think I kind of messed that up a bit. I think I've got too much of my lavender in there. Okay. So I'll put a couple with the extra light on top. And I like a petal to come right over top of our bird. As you see you're losing your light, pick up a bit more. Dark, medium, light. A lot of times you'll just catch the edge of a petal which appears to be underneath the other petals. You want to fill in these little flowerets, whether they end up bigger than what you have transferred on or smaller, it's not important. We just, and I'm turning my brush. I want you to see that I'm turning my brush. So I have my dark down, press, brush is very upright, press, pull to the middle, pull to the middle. What I mean by turning my brush is right here. Because I'm not turning my surface, I need my dark to be down and pull towards the center. See how I turn that brush so that my, pardon me, press, 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 always towards the middle. One, two, three, 4. 1, 2, 3. The other guy might be under there, but now the way I've done him, he has to be on top. Do you see? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And I can bring this guy back on top by doing him after. And I think we can make this guy grow out a little bit here, the way I've got him positioned. That looks quite pretty. And now I'm going to go for my number 2 filbert, loading it the same way. So it's got the 3 on there. And you can make these little ones like they're little balls almost. They're not quite opened at the end. So it's like 1, 2, and you just kind of curl them into each other. Just with the tip of the brush. So I've got these little balls there, and I'm going to take my liner, if I can find it. Oh, here it is. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the purples, and I'm going to pull a little stem in. I like it to be purple, and it could be fat up towards the top. And I'll just put a bit more in here so we can, there. So you see those, well, looks like we could have another petal right here. And using your brush turned on the side is a little bit harder on your brush, so you want to make sure that you're cleaning it out well afterwards. That's the important thing, is to make sure you're cleaning it well. So like I love this brush cleaner, the Masters brush cleaner and preservative. I take my brush and I will go back and forth, always on the flat of the brush, and work that right into the brush. And then I use my fingers after. I dip it in the water and I use my fingers after, and I just go in there and give it a little wiggle and work that paint in there. Work that soap in there to get that paint out of there. And I'll even work it on the palette a bit. If you're working it on your palette, you'll see if any color is coming out. And you'll be able to tell if you've done the good job or not. You want to get all that paint out of the brush. All right, so in the meantime, here I am. I cleaned this brush all out. I've decided that we needed another petal or two, so yeah, that's not too shabby. Yeah, I like the shape of that, so that looks pretty good. All right, so we've demoed flowers 1, 2, and 3 on birds 1, 2, and 3. While I've got my paint out for the purple lilac flowers, we'll take a little bit of the dioxazine purple and just softly tint a little here and there on our leaves. It doesn't have to be on all the leaves, but we don't have a lot of leaves in this one, so I just put a little tint here and there on the leaves. And I'm going to take a little tiny bit of avocado and plantation pine. Have my back to you there, plantation pine. And I'm just going to put a little on my palette, and I'm going to take, I should take my 3/8 for this size of leaf. Okay, and I'm going to mix those two colors because they're in our leaves. And I want to water this right down and make a wash. I blot it on a towel. So you see how watery it is and sheer. So I'll just kind of add a few what we call phantom or ghost leaves, and just pull a few off in that direction, heading away from our flowers. Could even have some coming behind the bird if you want. Doesn't matter. But it just, what it does is it pulls your eyes away from your picture so that everything is not just clumping together. Okay, so I have these little, and it kind of gives me a nice fill in between these guys over here. These were the biggest leaves, so I used my 3/8 for that. I can take and come in over here with this washi mix again and add with my 1/4 inch, add a few in around this guy. So these ones, we still have the blueberries to do, but it won't hurt to have these leaves on first. Doesn't matter at all. And you might decide after you get the blueberries on, oh, I want to go in and add a couple more because the blueberries covered a few of them. It's whatever you prefer. This is and some people don't like to do the phantom leaves. I do. I feel like it kind of just finishes off a piece soft and you know, it just, I feel it ties everything together, the phantom leaves. So, but it's absolutely your choice. All right, so I've added a few here and there, and that's what we'd like to do for these pieces.